We were supposed to walk the stage together as twins. He got a standing ovation. I got my name mispronounced and an empty row. I took off my cap, handed it to Mom, and said, "You can give this to him too." Nobody followed me out. My name's Craig, I'm 22, and if you'd told me 6 months ago that a graduation ceremony would be the thing that finally cracked open 2 decades of family dysfunction like a piñata full of emotional shrapnel, I would have laughed. But here we are. Buckle up, because this one's a ride. I have a twin brother named Colton. Identical twin, technically, though growing up you'd think we were from 2 completely different species based on how our family treated us. Colton was the sun. I was the thing that happened to be standing near the sun, occasionally catching a little ambient warmth when nobody was paying attention. Let me back up. Our parents are Dale and Charisse. Dad's a regional sales director for an agricultural equipment company, and Mom runs the front office for a mid-sized dental practice. We grew up in a 3-bedroom ranch house outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Nothing fancy, nothing broken either, at least not on the surface. We had a decent life by most standards, 2 cars in the driveway, a trampoline in the backyard, church on Sundays when Mom felt guilty enough, neighborhood cookouts in the summer, football on Saturdays in the fall. From the outside looking in, we were the definition of a normal Oklahoma family. But underneath all that ordinary was a current of favoritism so strong it could have powered a hydroelectric dam. Colton was always the one who got the louder cheers at Little League, the one whose art projects ended up on the fridge while mine ended up recycled, the one whose parent-teacher conferences got both parents in attendance while mine got a sticky note on the counter that said, "How'd it go?" I'm not exaggerating when I say I cannot remember a single time my mother looked at both of us standing side by side and chose to focus her attention on me first. Not once. Not at birthdays. Not at holidays. Not when we both got the flu at the same time, and she literally sat on Colton's side of the room reading him stories while I sweated through my sheets alone. And the thing is, Colton knew. He wasn't oblivious. He leaned into it. Not in a cruel way when we were kids. Honestly, he just accepted the royal treatment the way any kid would. But as we got older, it became more deliberate. He started positioning himself as the main twin, the one who spoke first in conversations, the one who introduced us to new people by saying, "I'm Colton, and this is my brother Craig." Like I was an accessory he was forced to bring along. Here's where things get relevant. Colton and I both attended Oklahoma State University. Same school, different majors. He went into sports management, I went into accounting. We were both set to graduate the same semester, spring 2026, with our bachelor's degrees. And for the first time in our lives, we were going to walk across the same stage, on the same day, in front of the same crowd. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the great equalizer. 2 diplomas, same weight, same accomplishment. Nobody could spin this one. I was wrong. Obviously. About 3 months before graduation, our mom started a group chat with the whole family, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, the works. The subject line was Colton's big day. Not the twins' big day. Not Craig and Colton's graduation. Not even a generic graduation celebration. Just Colton's. His name. Singular possessive. I stared at that for a solid minute, told myself I was reading into it, and moved on. Classic Craig. The messages started pouring in. Charisse was coordinating restaurant reservations for a post-ceremony dinner at a steakhouse downtown. She was organizing a photo wall for the party at the house afterward. She had custom t-shirts made. And I mean custom. They said, "Proud family of Colton Weber, class of 2026, with his graduation photo printed on the back." She'd ordered 24 of them. There was no version with my name. There was no version with both our names. There were 24 shirts celebrating one twin, distributed to every family member who would be in attendance. I didn't say anything. I just watched the messages roll in. Uncle Vance responded with a string of fire emojis. Grandma Lorraine said she was bursting with pride. My cousin Deacon asked what time to show up. And not a single person, not one, said, "Hey, what about Craig?" Let me tell you something about being the overlooked twin. You develop a sixth sense for it. You learn to preemptively lower your expectations so the disappointment doesn't hit as hard. You train yourself to smile when someone calls you by your brother's name. You learn to occupy less space, speak softer, need less. But there's a threshold. There's a line where the self-preservation instinct you built actually starts to corrode, and you realize you're not protecting yourself anymore. you're just disappearing. I hit that line the night I drove to my parents' house to drop off a set of spare keys my mom had asked for, and I saw the banner. It was stretched across the front porch railing, 6 feet wide, professionally printed. "Congratulations, Colton," with a blown-up senior photo and his degree title underneath. The porch lights were on, illuminating it like a marquee. I sat in the driveway for 5 full minutes just looking at it. When I walked inside, Mom was in the kitchen arranging centerpieces for the party. Little glass vases with blue and orange flowers, OSU colors. Each one had a tag attached that said, "Colton Weber, BS Sports Management, 2026. I set the keys on the counter and said, as casually as I could manage, "These look great. Are any of them for me too?" She didn't even look up. She just said, "Oh honey, we'll take plenty of pictures of you too. Don't worry." That was it. That was the extent of my acknowledgement. "We'll take plenty of pictures of you too." Like I was a guest at someone else's event who might accidentally end up in the background of a good shot. I drove home that night and sat in my apartment parking lot with the engine off for almost 20 minutes. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was just doing the math. 22 years of being second. 22 years of politely accepting crumbs from a table I helped build. And in 2 weeks, I was going to walk across a stage in front of 300 people, and the only section cheering would be wearing another man's face on their chest. The next morning, I got a text from Colton. Not a call, a text. It said, "Hey bro, Mom said you stopped by. Thanks for the keys. Oh also, I'm doing a speech at the ceremony. Department nominated me. Pretty sick, right?" I typed back, "That's awesome, man. Congrats." And then I sat there, staring at my phone, and something very quiet shifted inside me. Not rage, not sadness. Something more structural than that. Like a load-bearing wall in my chest just decided it was done holding weight. I pulled up the university's graduation page and confirmed my ceremony time. I confirmed my name was on the list. I confirmed my seat assignment. And then I did something I'd never done before in 22 years of being Craig Weber, the other twin. I started making a plan. Not a dramatic one. Not a vindictive one. Just a plan that, for the first time, centered entirely around me. 2 weeks out. The banner was up. The shirts were printed. The restaurant was booked. And nobody had any idea that the quiet twin had finally stopped being quiet on the inside. The 2 weeks before graduation moved fast. Too fast for my family to notice what I was doing, which was exactly the point. Let me set the scene. Colton's department speech was a big deal. The sports management program had nominated him as their student speaker, which meant he'd get 3 minutes at the podium before the diplomas were handed out. Mom treated this like he'd been invited to address the United Nations. She called me 4 separate times that week, and every single call was about Colton's speech. What tie should he wear? Should he memorize it or use notes? Did I think he should open with a joke? I said all the right things. He should definitely memorize it. A joke would land great. The navy tie. I was helpful. I was supportive. I was the perfect background character, and I played that role with surgical precision because I needed them all comfortable. I needed them relaxed and unaware. Meanwhile, I was making moves of my own. First, I reached out to 3 people. My best friend since freshman year, a guy named Emmett who'd been my roommate for 2 semesters and understood my family situation better than anyone. My girlfriend of 14 months, Sloan, who had watched the favoritism play out in real time at every holiday dinner she'd attended. And my academic advisor, Dr. Tulliver, who had written me a letter of recommendation so glowing it nearly made me cry when I read it. Here's what none of my family knew. While Colton was getting nominated for a 3-minute departmental speech, I had been quietly building something significantly bigger. I graduated summa cum laude, top of my class in the accounting program. I had a 3.94 GPA. I'd completed 2 internships, one with a regional CPA firm and one with the state comptroller's office, and I had received the Dawson Hargrove Award, which is the highest academic honor the business college gives to a graduating senior. 1 recipient per year. And that recipient was walking across the stage 2 weeks from now while his family wore shirts with someone else's name on them. I hadn't told my parents any of this. Not the GPA, not the award, not the internships, nothing. And I know what you're thinking, why not? Why wouldn't you share that? Because I tried. I tried for 4 years. Every time I brought up a grade or an achievement, the conversation got redirected within 30 seconds. That's great, honey. Oh, by the way, did you hear Colton made the intramural rugby finals? Every single time. So I stopped volunteering the information, and not a single person in my family ever thought to ask. Dr. Tulliver had told me I'd be recognized individually during the ceremony. The Dawson Hargrove recipient gets called to the stage separately, shakes hands with the dean, and receives the award in front of the entire graduating class. It's a moment, a real one, and my family was going to see it happen whether they planned for it or not. But here's the part where things got sharp. Graduation morning. I drove to my parents' house early because Charisse had insisted the whole family ride together. I walked in, and the house looked like a Colton Weber museum. There were balloons in the living room, a cake on the counter with his name piped in blue frosting, and a stack of those custom t-shirts sitting on the dining table ready for distribution. Dad was adjusting his shirt collar in the hallway mirror. He saw me and said, "You ready for today, kid?" I nodded and said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm ready." He smiled, patted me on the shoulder, and then said, "Your brother's nervous about the speech. Go tell him he's going to crush it." I went upstairs and found Colton in his room, pacing. He was holding index cards and mouthing words to himself. When he saw me, he looked relieved and said, "Craig, thank God. Read this and tell me if the ending's too cheesy." I read it. It was fine. Generic motivational stuff about chasing your dreams and never giving up. I told him it was great and that the crowd would love it. He looked at me and said, "Thanks, man. Seriously, I know today's a big deal for both of us." And I almost believed he meant it. Almost. But then he added, "Mom's got the photographer booked for my stuff right after, so maybe don't wander off too far so they can grab a few with both of us." My stuff. The photographer was for his stuff. I was invited to linger nearby in case they needed a prop. I smiled and said, "Wouldn't miss it." The ceremony was at the convention center downtown. When we arrived, the family was already assembling in the lobby. All 20-something of them. Every single one wearing those custom t-shirts under their jackets. Grandma Lorraine had bedazzled hers with extra rhinestones. Uncle Vance had his tucked into pressed slacks like it was business casual. Cousin Deacon, who I actually liked, was the only one who looked a little uncomfortable. He pulled me aside and said quietly, "Hey man, for what it's worth, I think this whole shirt thing is kind of messed up." I looked at him and said, "I appreciate that, Deke." And I meant it. But I didn't need his sympathy anymore. I needed about 90 more minutes. The ceremony started. Colton and I were seated in different sections since we were in different colleges. I was surrounded by fellow accounting and finance majors, people who knew exactly who I was and what I'd accomplished. My friend Emmett was 2 rows behind me. Sloan was in the audience section directly behind the faculty, exactly where I'd asked her to sit. Colton's speech came early in the program. He walked up to the podium, adjusted the mic, and delivered his 3 minutes like a pro. I'll give him that. He was charismatic, confident, and the crowd loved him. When he finished, my family's section erupted. Standing ovation. The custom t-shirts came out from under jackets like a coordinated flash mob. 20-plus people on their feet, cheering, waving, holding up their phones. Colton grinned and did a little wave from the stage. It was his moment, and he owned it. Then the diploma started. They went by college, alphabetical. Business college came before the College of Education, so my section walked first. When they called my name, the announcer mispronounced it. Craig Webber. Not Weber. Webber. A small thing, sure, but it landed like a paper cut on a sunburn. I glanced toward my family's section as I crossed the stage and saw exactly what I expected. Mom was looking at her phone. Dad was talking to Uncle Vance. Grandma Lorraine was adjusting her purse strap. Not a single one of them was watching. The empty row wasn't literal, but it felt like it. 24 people, matching shirts, and not one pair of eyes on me as I received my diploma. Emmett clapped from his seat. Sloan stood up alone in her section and cheered loud enough that the girl next to her flinched. Dr. Tulliver, seated with the faculty, gave me a nod and a quiet smile. Those 3 people saw me. My family didn't. But the ceremony wasn't over. And what came next, nobody in Section G, Row 12, was prepared for. The dean returned to the microphone and said, "Before we continue, we have a special recognition. Each year, the Spears School of Business presents the Dawson Hargrove Award to the graduating senior who has demonstrated the highest academic achievement, professional excellence, and service to the university community." I stood up. I straightened my gown. And I walked toward the stage for the second time that morning. This time alone. This time by name. This time with the entire auditorium watching. And that's when my mother finally looked up from her phone. The dean said my full name into the microphone, clear as a bell this time. Craig Allen Weber. No mispronunciation. No hesitation. He listed the GPA, the internships, the faculty nomination, and the fact that I was the first student in 4 years to receive the award with a unanimous committee vote. The applause from the business college section was immediate and loud because those were my people, the ones who'd sat next to me in tax law seminars and watched me pull all-nighters in the library. They knew. I walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, accepted the plaque, and turned to face the audience. I didn't look at my family section. I looked at Sloan. She was on her feet, both hands over her mouth, tears running down her face. Emmett had stood up in his row and was clapping with his hands above his head like I'd just scored the game-winning touchdown. Dr. Tulliver was beaming. And in Section G, row 12, 24 people in matching Colton Weber t-shirts sat in stunned silence. I could feel it without looking. That specific silence that happens when people realize they've been caught. I returned to my seat. The ceremony continued. Colton walked for his diploma about 40 minutes later, and the family section came alive again, but it was different now. Muted. Self-conscious. Like cheering at full volume suddenly felt inappropriate, and they couldn't quite figure out why. When the ceremony ended and the graduates filed out, I didn't go to the family meeting point. I walked straight to the lobby, found Sloan, and hugged her for a solid 30 seconds without saying a word. Emmett found us a minute later and said, "Brother, that was the most satisfying thing I have ever witnessed in a public building." I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had in weeks, and the three of us walked toward the exit. That's when Mom appeared. She came through the crowd fast, Dad a few steps behind her, Colton trailing with his cap still on and a confused expression on his face. "Craig, wait. Where are you going?" "We have the restaurant reservation in an hour." I stopped and turned around. I was calm. I'd rehearsed this moment 100 times in my head, but I didn't need the rehearsal. The calm was real. I reached up, took off my graduation cap, and held it out to her. She looked at it like I was handing her a grenade. "What are you doing?" she said. "You can give this to Colton too," I said. "Add it to the collection." She blinked. "Craig, what are you talking about? Come on, we need to take pictures." "No," I said. "You need to take pictures of Colton. That's what today is, right? Colton's big day. That's what the group chat said. That's what the shirts say. That's what the banner on the porch says. I'm just the brother who happened to graduate on the same day." Dad stepped forward with that measured parental voice he uses when he thinks a situation can be managed with tone alone. "Son, you're making a scene. Let's just get to the restaurant, and we'll talk about this later." "I'm not making a scene, Dad. I'm just leaving." "That's actually the opposite of a scene." Colton spoke up then. "Craig, come on, man. Don't be like this. Today was awesome for both of us." I looked at him. "Colton, did you know I graduated summa cum laude?" He hesitated. "I mean, I knew you did well." "Did you know I got the Dawson Hargrove Award? The one the dean just handed me in front of 3,000 people." He shifted his weight. "I saw that, yeah. That was cool. Did you know about it before today?" Silence. "Nobody did," I said, "because nobody asked. In 4 years of college, not one person in this family asked me a single meaningful question about my academics. Not my GPA, not my internships, not my career plans. Nothing. And that's fine. Honestly, I've made peace with that. But I'm not going to sit at a restaurant with 24 people wearing your face on their shirts and pretend that today was about both of us. Because it wasn't. It was never going to be." Mom's face had gone through about 6 different expressions during that speech and had finally landed on wounded. "Craig, that is so unfair. We are proud of you. We've always been proud of you. Then why didn't you watch me walk across the stage?" She opened her mouth and nothing came out. Because there was no good answer. She hadn't watched. She knew she hadn't watched. And the fact that I knew it too meant the lie she was about to tell had nowhere to land. I turned to Sloan, who was standing a few feet back with her arms crossed and a look on her face that could have cut glass. "We're going to lunch," I said. I looked at Emmett. "You in?" "Already looking up menus," he said, holding up his phone. I walked out of the convention center lobby without looking back. Nobody followed me. Not Mom, not Dad, not Colton, not Grandma Lorraine, not Uncle Vance, not a single one of the 24 matching t-shirts. The glass doors swung shut behind me, and I stood on the sidewalk for about 3 seconds, just breathing. The Oklahoma sun hit my face, and I realized my hands were completely steady. No trembling, no adrenaline shakes. Just stillness. I pushed through the parking lot, and, for the first time in 22 years, the empty space behind me didn't feel like rejection. It felt like choice. Sloan drove. Emmett rode shotgun and played music too loud on purpose, which was exactly what I needed. We ended up at a small barbecue place near campus, the kind with paper towels on the table and sweet tea in mason jars. I ordered a brisket plate and ate the entire thing without checking my phone once. The text started around 2 in the afternoon. Mom first, then Dad, then Colton, then Grandma Lorraine, then Uncle Vance. Each one a variation of the same theme. You embarrassed us. You ruined the day. You need to apologize. This was supposed to be a family celebration. Notice the framing. I ruined the day. I embarrassed them. Not, we're sorry we overlooked you. Not, we should have done better. Just an avalanche of people who watched me walk away and decided the problem was that I walked, not that they gave me every reason to. I didn't respond to any of them. Not that day. Not that night. I went home to my apartment, set the plaque on my desk, and sat in the quiet. Sloan stayed with me but gave me space, which is one of the things I love about her. She knows when I need proximity without conversation. Around 9 that night, one more text came through. This one was from Deacon. It said, "Hey man, I just want you to know I looked it up. The Dawson Hargrove thing is a seriously big deal. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry about today. All of it." I typed back, "Thanks, Deke. That means more than you know." And I meant every word of it. In a family of 20-something people, exactly one of them had taken the time to Google what I'd accomplished. 1. That ratio tells you everything. And then I turned off my phone, opened my laptop, and started doing something I probably should have done years ago. I started documenting everything. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just out of the very clear, very calm realization that the people who were supposed to love me equally had never intended to. And the only person who was ever going to protect Craig Weber's interests was Craig Weber. What I found in those files over the next 72 hours made the graduation snub look like a warm-up act. So here's the thing about being an accounting major with a near-perfect GPA and 2 internships under your belt. You develop a very specific set of skills. You learn how to read financial documents the way other people read novels, with an eye for plot holes. And when you turn that eye on your own family, the plot holes don't just show up. They scream. It started with a question I'd never thought to ask before. Where did my money go? Let me explain. When Colton and I turned 18, our grandfather on Dad's side, Lloyd Webber, passed away. Grandpa Lloyd was old school, a rancher his whole life out near Pawhuska. He wasn't wealthy by big city standards, but he had land and savings, and he'd set up a trust for each of his grandchildren. Equal shares. I knew about this growing up because Lloyd used to tell us every Thanksgiving. Each one of you kids has got something waiting for you when you're old enough to handle it. He'd say it with a wink, like it was the best secret in the world. When we turned 18, Dad told us the trusts had been distributed. Colton got his, about $48,000, which he used to buy a truck, pay off some credit card debt, and put a deposit on a nicer apartment. I asked Dad about mine, and he said, "We rolled yours into a family education fund to help cover tuition." I accepted that at face value because I was 18 and I trusted my father. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I didn't request documentation. I just nodded and moved on. 4 years later, sitting in my apartment 3 days after graduation, I pulled up every financial record I could access and started cross-referencing. What I found made my stomach drop. My tuition had been covered by a combination of academic scholarships and federal financial aid. Every semester, I'd applied for every grant and scholarship available, and between the Pell Grant, the Oklahoma Tuition Aid Grant, and 3 separate merit scholarships, my out-of-pocket tuition costs over 4 years were less than $6,000. I had the records to prove it because I'm the kind of person who saves every financial aid letter in a labeled folder. So where did the $48,000 from Grandpa Lloyd's trust go? I called the trust administrator, a small law firm in Bartlesville that had handled Lloyd's estate. The woman I spoke with was cautious at first, but once I verified my identity and proved I was one of the named beneficiaries, she pulled the file. The trust had been disbursed in full when I turned 18. The check had been issued to Dale Weber as custodial parent, with a signed authorization form bearing my name. I asked her to send me a copy of that authorization form. When it arrived in my email an hour later, I stared at it for a long time. The signature on the line that said beneficiary was not my handwriting. It wasn't even close. Someone had signed my name in a loose, hurried scrawl that looked nothing like my actual signature. I pulled up my driver's license application from the same year for comparison. Night and day, my father had forged my signature, collected my $48,000 inheritance, told me it went toward tuition, and pocketed it. While I worked part-time jobs and ate ramen to cover my living expenses, my own trust fund had evaporated into someone else's spending. I didn't call Dad. I didn't call Mom. I didn't even call Colton, though a dark part of me wondered if he knew. Instead, I called someone who would actually help me. A lawyer named Harlan Goss. Harlan was a referral from Dr. Tulliver, who had a brother-in-law in estate law. I met Harlan at his office the next morning, a small firm on the south side of Tulsa that smelled like old carpet and strong coffee. He was in his 50s, direct, unflappable, and had the kind of face that suggested he'd heard worse stories than mine before breakfast. I laid out everything. The trust, the forged signature, the tuition records, the discrepancy. Harlan looked at the authorization form for about 10 seconds, set it down, and said, "This is forgery, and the misappropriation of a minor's trust disbursement. Your father committed a felony." I sat with that word for a minute. Felony? My dad. The guy who drove me to my first day of college. The guy who patted me on the shoulder graduation morning and told me to go reassure my brother about his speech. A felon. Harlan continued. He said I had several options. Civil action to recover the funds, a formal complaint to the Oklahoma Bar's Trust Oversight Division, or, if I wanted to go nuclear, a criminal referral to the district attorney for forgery and embezzlement. He recommended starting with the civil route and using the criminal angle as leverage if Dad chose not to cooperate. I told him to prepare everything. All of it. Civil filings, a formal demand letter, and a draft criminal referral. I wanted the full arsenal, even if I never had to use all of it. Over the next 2 weeks, I operated on 2 tracks. Track 1 was the legal preparation with Harlan. He had a forensic document examiner compare my known signatures against the one on the trust form, and the report came back definitive. The authorization signature was inconsistent with my handwriting in 16 out of 20 measurable characteristics. It was, in the examiner's professional opinion, almost certainly executed by a different individual. Track 2 was acting completely normal, and I need you to understand how difficult that was. Every Sunday dinner, every family text chain, every casual phone call from Mom asking if I'd gotten a haircut yet, I responded with the same mild, agreeable Craig they'd always known. I asked about Colton's job search. I complimented Mom's new garden planters. I helped Dad troubleshoot his laptop over the phone. I was the perfect son, and not a single one of them suspected that a demand letter with their name on it was sitting in a manila folder on Harlan Goss's desk, ready to be mailed. Sloan knew everything. She was the one who sat next to me at Harlan's office and took notes. Emmett knew the broad strokes. Deacon, the only family member I trusted, knew something was wrong, but I hadn't given him details yet. I wanted to keep his hands clean until I was ready. The demand letter was finalized on a Tuesday afternoon. Harlan called me and read it over the phone. It was concise, professional, and devastating. It identified the trust disbursement, the forged authorization, the tuition records proving the funds were never applied to my education, and it demanded full restitution of $48,000 plus accrued interest, totaling approximately $57,200 within 30 days. Failure to comply would result in the filing of a civil lawsuit and a referral of the forgery evidence to the Tulsa County District Attorney. "You want me to send it?" Harlan asked. I took a breath. I thought about the banner on the porch, the t-shirts, the mispronounced name, the empty eyes in Section G. I thought about 18-year-old Craig, trusting his father with a simple question and getting a simple lie in return. "Send it," I said. The letter arrived at my parents' house on a Thursday morning. I know the exact time it was delivered because at 11:47 that morning, my phone lit up with a call from Dale Weber. I let it ring. Then it rang again. Then a text from Mom that was just 3 words, "Call US now." I silenced my phone, set it face down on my desk, and went back to work on my CPA exam prep materials. The storm was here, and I was ready for it. What I wasn't ready for was the voicemail Dad left at 12:15. His voice wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was scared. And scared people, I was about to learn, do incredibly desperate things. Dad's voicemail was 43 seconds long. I listened to it twice because some things need to be heard more than once to be believed. His voice started steady, the same controlled Dale Weber tone he used when selling equipment to a skeptical rancher, but by the end it had cracked open like old concrete. Craig, it's your father. I received some mail today that I need to discuss with you urgently. I don't know who you've been talking to or what kind of advice you've been getting, but this is a family matter, and it needs to stay in the family. You call me back today, not tomorrow. Today. The phrase that stuck with me was family matter. He'd stolen $48,000 from his own son, forged a signature to do it, and his first instinct was to frame it as a dinner table conversation. That told me everything about how this would go if I let it happen on his terms. So I didn't. I called Harlan instead and told him about the voicemail. He said, "Good. That means the letter landed. Don't call him back. Don't respond to any of them. Let the 30-day clock run and let him sit with it." That was the plan. But my family doesn't do patience. 3 days after the letter arrived, Colton showed up at my apartment. No warning, no text, just a knock on the door at 7 in the evening. I opened it, and there he was, still in his work clothes. His face had that specific expression I'd seen 1,000 times growing up, the one that said he'd been sent by Mom to fix something. "Can I come in?" he said. I stepped aside. He walked in, looked around my apartment like he was cataloging it, and sat down on the couch without being invited. Sloane was in the bedroom. I could hear her go quiet. "Craig, what the hell is going on?" he said. "Mom's been crying for 3 days. Dad's not sleeping. They got some letter from a lawyer saying you're threatening to have Dad arrested." "Not arrested," I said. "Investigated. There's a difference, legally. Don't do that. Don't give me the smart guy accounting voice. Talk to me like your brother." I sat down across from him. "Okay. When we turned 18 and Grandpa Lloyd's trust was distributed, Dad told me my share went into a family education fund. It didn't. My tuition was covered by scholarships and grants. The $48,000 was disbursed to Dad using a forged signature, and it went somewhere that wasn't my education. That's not an accusation. That's a documented fact." Colton was quiet for a long moment, longer than I expected. Then he said something that hit different. "I know." 2 words. Flat. No emotion. Just a confession dressed as a statement. "You know what exactly?" I said. "I know about the trust. Dad told me about 2 years ago when I asked him for money to cover a security deposit. He said the family fund had been used for house repairs and Colton's truck." He caught himself. "My truck." I let that sink in. My inheritance had partially been used to buy my brother a truck. The same truck Colton drove to my apartment to tell me to drop the whole thing. "And you didn't think to tell me," I said. "He's our dad, Craig. He's a thief, Colton, who committed forgery against his own kid. That's not a family disagreement. That's a crime." Colton leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What do you want? Mom and Dad will figure out a way to pay you back. We can work this out without lawyers." "It's not just about the money," I said. "This is about the fact that nobody in this family has ever treated me like I mattered enough to be honest with. Not about the trust. Not about graduation. Not about anything. You got a standing ovation and 24 matching t-shirts. I got my name mispronounced and an empty row. And now I find out my inheritance funded your truck payment and Mom's kitchen renovation." Colton didn't have a response for that. He just sat there, jaw tight, staring at the floor. After a minute he stood up and said, "I'll talk to Dad. Tell him to talk to Harlan." I said. He left. I closed the door behind him, leaned against it, and exhaled. Sloane came out of the bedroom, sat next to me on the floor, and held my hand without saying a word. That woman is a fortress. The 30-day window on the demand letter expired on a Wednesday. Dad did not pay. He did not call Harlan. Instead, he sent me a handwritten letter, 6 pages long, explaining how the money had been borrowed for family expenses and that taking legal action against your own father was something you could never undo. He was right about that last part. You can't undo it. That's kind of the point. Harlan filed the civil suit on Thursday. Weber versus Weber, Tulsa County District Court. Fraudulent misappropriation, forgery, breach of fiduciary duty. Along with the civil filing, he submitted the forensic handwriting analysis and tuition records to the DA's office for review. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Mom called me 11 times in one day. I didn't answer. Dad tried a different approach and called Sloane, which was a catastrophic miscalculation because Sloane told him, in the politest tone imaginable, that he should direct all communication through counsel and that she hoped he had a nice evening. Uncle Vance left me a voicemail calling me ungrateful. The man who wore my brother's face on a t-shirt while ignoring my existence had strong opinions about gratitude. The only family member who didn't pile on was Deacon. He texted me the morning after the filing and said, "I don't know all the details, but I know you wouldn't do this without a reason. I've got your back." Deacon is the only person from that family tree I plan to keep in my life. Some branches are worth saving. The civil case moved faster than I expected. Dad hired a lawyer, a guy named Pruitt who seemed to specialize in talking tough in emails and folding in depositions. Pruitt's initial response was that the trust disbursement was a legitimate parental financial decision. That argument lasted exactly until Harlan presented the forensic examiner's report during the first discovery hearing. The judge looked at the comparison signatures, looked at Pruitt, and said, "Counselor, are you aware of what your client is asking this court to accept?" Pruitt requested a recess. 20 minutes later, he came back with a settlement offer. Full restitution of $48,000 plus $9,200 in accrued interest, paid in 12 monthly installments, in exchange for withdrawing the criminal referral. Harlan looked at me. I nodded. We accepted. The DA's office ultimately declined to prosecute, partly because restitution was being made. I was fine with that. I didn't need my father in handcuffs. I needed my money, my dignity, and a clean separation. The first installment arrived 30 days later. Direct deposit, right into my account. I stared at the notification and felt almost nothing. Not triumph, not relief, just a quiet, structural settlement, like a building that had been leaning for decades finally straightening out. That was 4 months ago. Here's where things stand now. I passed the CPA exam on my first attempt. I'm working at a firm in downtown Tulsa, entry level but with a clear trajectory, and I come home every night to an apartment I pay for with money I earned. Sloan and I moved in together last month. Emmett is 3 blocks away, and we still do Tuesday night basketball at the community center. Life is small and good in mine. I haven't spoken to my parents since the settlement was finalized. No contact. Mom sends texts sometimes, usually some version of "we miss you." I read them, I don't respond, and I don't feel guilty about it. Colton reached out once with a text about how he hoped we could rebuild someday. I appreciated the sentiment, but I didn't respond. Rebuild requires a foundation, and ours was made of tissue paper and favoritism. Grandpa Lloyd's plaque from the trust administrator still has my name on it. The Dawson Hargrove Award still sits on my desk. And somewhere in a closet in a ranch house outside Tulsa, there are 24 custom t-shirts with the wrong twins' name on them collecting dust. I took off my cap and handed it to my mother that day because I was done performing gratitude for people who never performed interest. I walked out because staying would have meant agreeing, one more time, that I was less. Nobody followed me out, and that used to be the part of the story that hurt. But now, honestly, it's the part I'm most grateful for. Because if nobody follows you, nobody can hold you back. My name is Craig Weber. I graduated summa cum laude. I earned every single thing I have. And I will never, ever hand my cap to anyone again.